This is Chief Studios. My name is Taylor Bell, and I hate to say it, but I told you so.
Yeah. Woo.
I just need my space right now.
Fresh off the G5 jet, I'm on my way to a brand new kit.
Well. Chiefs lose in a Monday night matchup, Week 11, 17-21 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And, the Chiefs are getting pretty predictable at this point, trending downwards at this point. And I think by now we know what we can expect week to week, right? If they have not, the Chiefs are coming off of a bye week. Andy Reid has notoriously been known for his strong performances and wins coming off of a bye week. Now, Philadelphia had an off week as well last week, so both teams had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup. So I was hoping that the previous 2 games, the issues that arose in those 2 games would get fixed, or basically show some sign of improvement, right? And we did not get that. So I think we can tell at this moment what type of team we have. The matchups came fairly good as far as I wanted to face better teams in the NFL towards the midway point of the season, and this season has developed in that pattern, right? Because you had the Eagles, which are one of the best teams in the league, and then you had the Dolphins coming into that Germany game, going into the bye with a very good record. So I wanted to play the better teams to see where we match up, right? Measuring stick. And I think we know what this Chiefs team is in 2023. The Chiefs did not score any points, 0 points in the second half of the last 3 games. They put on a very decent looking offensive game in the first half of the last 3 weeks. And in the second half, nothing. Literally nothing. Looked like 2 different teams. And I was hoping coming into this game, the Chiefs coaches would make some sort of adjustment for that second half poor performance coming off of those previous 2 weeks. And it's the same story. Now, why was there no change? What was the cause of that? Look, the coaches can scheme and can draw up new plays. They can edit plays. They can tinker with different things here and there. But if you don't have the players, the personnel to go out and execute those plays, if you don't have the players, more specifically the wide receivers, that can separate, that can get down the field, that can catch the ball when thrown to them, you're going to have these types of performances. Now, I do have some audio that we're going to get into. There was a press conference with, I'm not going to play the whole press conference. I edited down a couple different clips, right? Audio clips from the offensive coach, Matt Nagy, was answering questions in regards to the offense, more specifically the wide receiver position. Because look, that is the biggest liability on this team. The biggest. The game played out. Look, the Chiefs jumped out to a big lead. And it took the Philadelphia Eagles until the second half, late into the second half, to kind of, inch closer towards the Chiefs score, and then ultimately bust through and take the lead midway through the fourth. Chiefs tried to move the ball, and nothing was working in the second half. Now, look, there's obviously a famous, I guess now famous, heard around the world, touchdown pass with, I believe, a minute and a few seconds left that would have secured the win. Touchdown pass right over the shoulder, and Valdez Scantling dropped the pass. I was going to show highlights, but we will get copyright strike on YouTube, so I can't. But we do have pictures, and Coach Nagy, you will hear him discuss the struggles and development or lack thereof development in that wide receiving group. But before we get to the audio, I was going to record this earlier this morning. Obviously, I had stuff to do. It's later in the afternoon, but just started to think about this team. I'm not going to review the game. Look, I broke down some of the game in the other big plays. It didn't just come down to that drop touchdown pass. There was a fumble by Travis Kelce, and there was an interception in the end zone thrown by Patrick Mahomes. Does not happen often, but it did. So look, those two huge mistakes. Philadelphia is undefeated when they win the turnover battle. So, and they continue that streak, right? The Chiefs had two big turnovers, major turnovers that, look, they if they scored on one of those possessions, they would have had the lead later in the game. I get that. But with all being said, with all the plays that happen, with those two turnovers, the Chiefs, it still comes down to the dropped touchdown pass by Valdez Scantling. This Chiefs team, look, when you have dynasties, right, the Chiefs are on a cusp. I wouldn't call it a dynasty yet because I think you have to do it. Look, everybody has an opinion on it. My opinion is you got to be in Super Bowls. Basically, like the last 5 years, what the Chiefs have done, you have to continue that for at least 6 or, more than 5 years, right? I would like to see it 6 or 7 years continuously. And I always think back to the Patriots. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's the last quote unquote dynasty. But if you follow Tom Brady's career, and hang with me for a second, but if you follow Tom Brady's career, he had a long career, right? I hope Mahomes plays for 22, 23 years. That'd be awesome, right? But that's a long period of time. That's a long time. You have transition phases as far as the team identity. They started off when Brady got put in off the bench. They were more of in the early 2000s, they were more of a defensive-minded football team, meaning their defense was very strong, relied on the defense, relied on holding the opponent to a low score. So your offense, is not so dependent on having to score a ton of points during the games to win. And then they sort of transitioned to they lost some defensive pieces, they signed to other teams. And then that's when you get the Wes Welkers, the other wide receivers that basically make it, like I've been quoted as saying, as a quick strike offense where they're more offensive minded, right? And sort of in the third phase, which was kind of a mixture of the two towards the end of Brady's career in New England. But this Chiefs team is going through a transition as well. It is, and I think last night was the nail in the coffin for the Chiefs, putting the high-powered, explosive style, long ball type of play. That's over and done with, right? That's not coming back this season, at least. It's not. And I figured it was that way going through the first few weeks of the season, but you needed more evidence to kind of make a claim to see where this team is headed in the, for the year. That's gone. Now, as we move into, as you can tell, the defense looks freaking awesome. And I think now, who knows where Chris Jones is going next year? I will get to that later. But the team it's so frustrating when you're a defensive heavy team, yet the offense can't do it. It's very up and down. Team is very inconsistent. Clear liability in the wide receiving core. It is what it is, right? I don't want to sit here every show and just basically repeat everything I've been saying for the last couple months here on this show. I don't want to do that. Well, for one thing, for the viewer, it's not fun, and for me, I don't want to be repeating myself. But they lost last night. I'm sure you've seen the highlights. I would play them, but I would get a copyright strike. However, let's hear some interesting stuff. What Coach Matt Nagy had to say just about an hour ago in a press conference. Let me take the music down for a second. Let's pause this and I will get him going. Let's see. Where are we at? Let's talk about the wide receivers. Ready? Let me turn the volume up.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready.
Perfect. We'll kick it off with Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Matt. You sort of knew this was going to be a season of development for a lot of your wide receivers, just given the youth. But it seems like maybe that process is going a little slower than everybody hoped. Is there reasons for that? Maybe why this group hasn't developed quite as quickly as everybody wanted? And Brad, I'll have a second question as well.
Sure. You know what, Adam, I think that, as we go through this process and we go through this year of building this offense and like we've been talking about all year, what guys do well and what their strengths and weaknesses are. We want to be able to, number one, score points, eliminate turnovers, eliminate penalties, as an offense in general. And then, when the plays are there to be made, make the plays. And that's everybody. And the same thing with us as coaches, when we have a chance to make good calls and practice and put these guys in good positions, we want to be able to do that. And I think, we've been dealing with a good amount of guys here that are all great players that want to do well and succeed. And when you have a game like we had last night, where there might be a little bit of a magnifying glass on whether it's some of the drops or whether it's a specific play that can be a little bit bigger than others, it can definitely, be a big deal. And we understand that, and the players understand that. But in the end, we have a lot of trust in these guys and we believe in them. And I think that's very, very important. And you hear that and you see that from Pat. And it's something that we just continue to stick together and keep working through. And we know it's not going to be easy. But honestly, the biggest thing, Adam, is it goes back to, again, like, let's not beat ourselves with turnovers and penalties in the end, and drops. I know that can be a part of it as well, but there's a lot that goes into all of that. So that's a long way to say that, yes, we know we need to be better. When you lose a game, it gets magnified. When you win a game, sometimes it gets deodorized. And I think we need to understand that, hey, we have good things ahead of us, and let's just stay positive and work through these, and we'll be all right.
Okay. And I got an MVS question, not just because of the drop last night, just sort of a general lack of production from this season. I remember when he came in, Andy really thought you guys maybe could expand his game, maybe go beyond what he did in Green Bay, and that really hasn't happened. Just why hasn't it worked out for him? What's going on with him?
Well, there's
real quick. He's talked. The media member is asking offensive coordinator Matt Nagy, if you couldn't tell, about Mark Valdez-Scantling, why his production. This has been a major issue with the Chiefs. Everybody knows this wide receiving core is probably the worst in the league. They lead the league in drops, more than doubling the second wide receiving core group in the league. So it's by far the major liability. Let's listen to what he has to say about this wide receiving core and Valdez-Scantling not being developed.
There's things that go into that, and I think it's probably everybody's definition. I know we all look at the numbers and that sort of thing, but there is a lot at the same point in time, Adam. There's a lot that he does well that sometimes doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And, for instance, you look at the touchdown catch that Travis had that everybody's going to read about, and the touchdown pass from Pat and the catch by Kelsey. But a lot of reasons why that play worked was because of what MVS did. And sometimes that doesn't show up in the stat book. And there's other things that he does and these players do that don't show up, that we have to make sure that they get credit for behind the scenes. And so he does a lot of that, and I think that's a credit to him, and that can be very selfless at times, which we love. And then production-wise and number-wise, yeah, he's not where he was last year, and we do know that we have hopefully a bunch of season left, and we want to be able to continue to keep working through these things as we have these different wide receivers. And I know similar to last year, but he's had a great attitude this whole time, and we just got to keep staying positive.
Okay, so that was Coach Matt Nagy. On the development, or shall I say lack of development for MVS, Marquez Valdez Scantling. Very frustrating. This Chiefs team, this Chiefs wide receiving core. And let's get into the last couple of questions for Matt Nagy that stood out for me, and then we will see a couple other topics here before I get out of here. But let's play this very last one. We also have a Rashee Rice question, right? Drafted number 1, not overall, but first round pick out of SMU, wide receiver. He should step up, right? He's a number 1 pick, wide receiver. What's going on with him?
The last one I had was about Rashee. I mean, I know earlier in the season, I think it was the preseason where Brett said he was more of a package player to open the season as you guys were trying to get him educated on the full offense. Is he still that, or is his playing time still affected by, putting him in the strengths of what he knows right now?
Not necessarily. I think he's done a good job of being able to show us that he can do more. And taking the time throughout the week to understand certain route concepts. We know what he can do with the football in his hand. We saw that yesterday a few times, and he's a physical runner and he has strong hands. Now I think you're noticing that some of his snaps are going up slightly as far as his percentages of snaps. And we want to continue to do that. That's the part of development that in the trust factor, which is real. And the more we can get of that, I think the better we will be, because he's a very good football player. And so I think you're right. He is growing, but it'll be in increments, and we like the path he's on right now.
Let's go next to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to Sam on the wide receiver playtime percentages. Watson led last night, and Moore's been kind of up and down. Marquez was a little bit lower than usual. It's just game by game, it seems to be very different. Is that game plan specific, or do you feel like you guys at this stage are still kind of evaluating like who the top receivers in this thing can be, or is it like kind of a mixture of both? I just was curious about that.
Yeah.
Hang on one second. This is a very important question, because this is basically asking, who's your number 1 wide receiver, right? They're asking, why haven't your guys, look, the reporter's asking, and it's a very valid, very, very fair question. Why aren't these guys stepping up? Basically, what's going on with your number 1 wide receiver? Number 1 wide receiver. This is a collection of number 3s, right? Possibly number 2s, but it's a collection of number 3 wide receivers. Basically, the 3rd best wide receiver on a football team. If you pluck the 3rd best wide receiver off of, 6 or 7 teams and throw them on the Chiefs, this is what you get. So, very good question, valid question. Let's get back to it.
It's probably a mixture of both, Pete. It's one where maybe one game based off of what we think personnel-wise we want to do or not do. And that can be whether we're in 13 personnel, 12 personnel, 11 personnel, whether we decide we want to throw the ball or run the ball. All of that kind of goes into it. We take a strong look at that every week, where we're putting guys. And it would be, it's certainly a little easier to do when you have less guys, because it's those 3 or 4 guys. We have a few more guys. that are a part of our wide receiver room. And so there's a little balance in the juggling act, on top of it. Hey, if somebody gets hurt, or if we, for whatever, someone just ran a deep route and now it's 3rd and 10 and they were in for this next route, but they ran 2 deep routes in a row, the next guy's up. So it's impossible to be perfect with all of that, but I think you'll probably see throughout the season, there's probably a little bit of a fluctuation in all the guys.
All right. Well, you heard it first here. So he's basically admitting that it's a quote unquote number 1 wide receiver by committee, meaning that it varies depending on game to game, on week to week, who your number 1 wide receiver is, obviously depending on the defense. And that's not typically how you football fans know, right? If you have an Andre Johnson, a DeAndre Hopkins, a Jerry Rice. Now I'm naming like Hall of Famers, but it's an example. When you have a number one wide receiver, they're your number 1 wideout every week, all week, every week, until they're not. That Matt Nagy comment proves to you that they're working with what they got, and what they got is just not good enough. It's just not good enough. And I think that's where this season is going to end up. It's just not good enough. Now, they have a game. Next game is against the Raiders. They're not having a fantastic year, but they do have a new coach. They have a new blood in the running through their system. So they'll Raiders going to come out ready to fight. Look, if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, you're going into this game thinking, "Damn, we got a shot." The Chiefs look like shit in the second half. If we can just weather the storm in the first half, we can come out in the second half, take advantage of their lackluster performance in the second half of these games. But moving on past that, you look, the Chiefs have won 7 games out of their first 11. They are going to make the playoffs, and they might possibly go to the AFC Championship game. The final 4 best teams in the NFL, final 2 in the AFC. But you're going to match up probably against Baltimore, maybe another team, but probably Baltimore. Now, Chiefs might have home field advantage, which does come into play. Look, it's not a guarantee. It's a guarantee. I can guarantee you to make the playoffs. It's not a guarantee they make it to the AFC Championship. They may have a shitty performance in their first game. They'll probably get a first round bye. Actually, they may not. I don't know, but they may play first week or get the bye. Regardless, whatever their first playoff game is, it's not a guarantee they win that to get to the AFC Championship game. Because when you play better teams like this is what happens. When you turn the ball over like this is what happens. When you can't catch the ball, this is what happens game after game after game. Why would the playoffs be any different? Are they just automatically going to get some stickum on their gloves before the playoff game and start catching balls? Are they going to drink Red Bull, and is it going to give them wings to fly and outrun the defensive back? Look, Valdez-Scantling blew past the defender, which doesn't happen much, but it did. Mahomes threw him the ball, hit him in the hands, dropped it for a possible game-winning catch, right? Let's say they go to the AFC Championship and miraculously win the game going to the Super Bowl. Now, honestly, honest question. Do you think the Chiefs, if Philly looks like they could go back to the Super Bowl, I guarantee you it's either going to be Philly, the 49ers, possibly Detroit, but probably not. So if you make it to the AFC Championship and beat Baltimore, which could be possible, they're not a perfect team. They have very, very similar issues to what the Chiefs do, but hell, at least they can score in the second half. Going into that AFC Championship game, let's say they beat Baltimore and go to the Super Bowl. Do you think this game, do you think this Chiefs team, with the game that they are playing, with the players that they have, with so many of the issues they have, do you see them beating Philadelphia? Do you see them beating the 49ers? I don't. Not the way the NFC teams are playing. I just don't see it, right? I just don't see it this year. From what they've shown us, not good enough to win a championship. Now, they could shock the world, and it would be very shocking. But if you're Mahomes, clearly you are the best player in the league. It's frustrating because you don't have the supporting cast around you to toss the ball. He could put them on his back. The receivers could start catching the ball. Now, I don't know, physically, you can't get faster um, over these next few weeks, but you can catch the ball, right? So if there is any wiggle room for improvement, it would be catching the ball. Now, when I said last week that they need to kind of shift towards a quick strike offense, that includes catching the ball. So another point that I want to see them point of emphasis that I would like to see more of is running the ball. They actually had last night what it looked like a very fluid, healthy, and productive running game. And it seemed like there wasn't much of that. They started off with a strong running game. Pacheco looked good. Mahomes had a few good runs. Now, I'm not depending on him to run, but I would like them to run the ball more, not turning into a rushing team, but maybe 5, 6, 7 more carries per game, 8 carries a game, something like that. Just it looked good last night, right? It looked decent. And then when they start throwing the balls, when they have issues, Travis Kelsey looks like he's getting older. Travis Kelsey, every time I see him, every game I see him play in, he's always limping, or he's always getting up from a tackle, kind of getting up, kind of slow, or you see a grimace on his face. I've noticed that probably for the last 6 games, and I picked up on that early in the season, and I continually see him. He's looking his age. Remember, when these players athletically, typically players don't have a LeBron like decline in their athletic ability. When they lose it fast. I mean, it's literally like basically almost overnight they lose it. Kelsey looks like he's almost there. I know we're gonna put another video out. He hinted at retirement last night after the game. Now I don't know if he was beat up and probably a little sour after the loss and the way that they lost. So the retirement talk might be a little premature, but I honestly don't think it's that far away. I think he's got maybe a couple more seasons and he's done mentally. I mean, he may already be done mentally, because when you start thinking about it, you hear that from pro athletes. When you start thinking about it, when you already have one foot out the door, that's it. Like, you are not performing at your optimal level the way you could if you're in it to win it. So I'm not saying he's not in it to win it. I'm just saying once you start talking about that, that seed gets planted in your brain and it starts growing. Athletically, it does look like he's taken a step back, which is a big issue. He is their quote unquote number one wide receiver, even though he's not a receiver. He's their number one option, I should say. And when he's not having a good night, as you could tell last night, not many good things happen in the passing game. Let's look at some stats real quick before we get out of here. I wanted to show you what I'm talking about in regards to the rushing game. All right, check this out. The player stats. Look at this stat line. 24 of 43, only 177 yards, 2 TDs, and you got that one really, really bad interception in the end zone. Doesn't happen often, but nobody's Superman. Everybody's human. So look, he's done so good, and shit happens. It'll happen every once in a while. But look at this. Look at the rushing. Pacheco had 19 carries, 89 yards, almost 5 yards a carry. And then you had Mahomes, which can scramble to get a first down. You can't really obviously rely on him for big yardage just to scramble to get a first down a couple times a game. Although he did have 6 carries. But then you had Edwards-Helaire, 2 carries for 20 yards, a 10 yards per rush average. Kadarius Toney, 7 yards per rush average. And McKinnon at 7 yards per rush average. So this is a very, very healthy game a healthy running game that I think is underutilized in this Kansas City offense. I would like to see them lean on this some more. I know it's hard. Look, when you get a lead, it's kind of like you damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because let's say you get a big lead like the Chiefs have done in the last 3 weeks. You get a big lead going into halftime. Coming into the second half, you start relying on the run a little more, right? You start relying on the run a little more. And then, regardless, win or lose after the game, let's say the game ends, and then the fans are always going to say, "Well, you got away from the style of play that you had in the first half that got you that big lead, right?" They're always gonna, "Well, you got away from the style. You just trying to sit on the clock and run the clock out." Or if you run the ball, and let's say it. Hang on a second. Or if you run the ball and it doesn't work, you're going to get blamed for that as well. So, um, it's frustrating, but I would like to see them run the ball more, a little more, right? I'm not saying run the whole, since the wide receivers obviously can't catch, so run the ball the whole game. No, you still need the pass game, obviously, but I would like to see maybe 5 to 7 more rushing attempts per game. And what an absolutely abysmal receiving stat lines that these are. Scaling didn't even have 1 catch. Obviously, that drop, he would like to have at least 1 catch. Obviously, that one late in the game that he dropped for the win. But I mean, just absolutely abysmal. Philly is beatable, right? That's the frustrating thing. If this was, well, I can't say if this was Chiefs of the past. Look, if any team played the way, if you take the Chiefs logo off the helmet and off the jerseys, you slap any team logo on there. If any team played like the Chiefs did in the first half and at least did half of what they did in the first half, they would have won the game. And again, those turnovers were huge, and the wide receivers cost you technically a game again, or lack of wide receivers cost you a game. So unfortunately, I think this is a pattern that will continue throughout the rest of the season. We will preview next week's game against the Las Vegas Raiders here probably tomorrow. And I'll have Coop come back on tomorrow, and we will review our picks from the week. I'm not going to brag, but I did pick Philadelphia to beat Kansas City, which I know I shouldn't do, but I need to win too. So I knew this was going to happen. I called it a few days ago, or all last week, basically. I think this is going to be a repetitive performance. I don't know what you can do. Like I said, you can scheme the wideouts, you can scheme them open, but it's hard to do that when they don't get separation, and it's hard to do that when they don't catch the ball. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Chiefs lose to the Eagles in Week 11 Monday Night Football. We will, like I said, we'll come back to you tomorrow. We will review our picks from the weekend of NFL football, and we'll preview the Raiders game on Sunday, and I'm going to live stream. I'm going to live stream the Chiefs game. So please put that on your calendar. Please join me. Should be fun. Should be interesting. And we'll have a fun time doing it too. So I appreciate everything. For Fred Davis, my name is Taylor Bell. This is Chief Studios. And don't forget, FFSN, Fans First Sports Network. You can catch us on Spotify. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcasts, search Chiefs Studios. And we are under the FFSN, Fans First Sports Network banner. And it's been a pleasure teaming up with them. They've been phenomenal. Please go search the audio form of this podcast, and you will find us. You can take us everywhere you go. It'll be right there in your pocket. Peace.